1, 2, 3, go. Click, click.
Click, click, motherfucker.
What? Look
Right
at
off the
little
get-go.
Tuxie cursing like he's an adult.
Big day.
Hello and welcome to Beyond Reproach. I'm Stephanie Domingo.
I'm Tux Lurzel.
We be drinking and we be swearing. I mean, Tux is
Already?
off to the
Oof.
races right now.
Big day, big day.
This is a show about scandals and scandalousness in American politics and government.
Show enough.
Yeah. I like that you're doing all this and you haven't had a sip of alcohol
Not
yet.
a single sip. Usually by the time we start, we've already
scared,
had like a cocktail that we drink first to get started. But we have 2 cocktails today.
Yes.
For the first segment, so I figured I don't need all that.
No, you don't.
Our listeners would enjoy it, but...
I mean, our last episode was...
all right, let's stop. Let's go take a shot.
Okay, yeah, 2 cocktails this time. I'm scared and excited.
Yeah. Today we are drinking 2 cocktails. I will get into why in but a moment. I have a question for you, Stephanie. To start, what do you know about Tiki cocktails or Tiki culture?
I know that it's island themed.
Yeah.
A lot of the drinks have coconut or like really fruity bases.
Yeah.
Lots of garnish. It's something that you would have like in a like Puerto Rico sort of situation. Yeah, just beachy summer vibes.
Totally. Yeah.
I know that it was big in the 60s, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
I think a
and
lot
I
of people...
learned most of that from you on the show. So
because we've had the Blue Hawaiian already. What else have we? The daiquiri is sort of tiki-ish. I would say it's tiki adjacent.
Yeah.
Not exactly tiki, but it's pretty close.
It's very close.
Basically tiki, I'm saying tiki culture meaning like an American kind of restaurant slash... we'll get into the cultural appropriation part of it in but a moment.
Yeah. Is it like Polynesian?
Yes.
Of course.
Yeah.
Oh, God. Wow.
It kind of started in the very beginning of the 30s during the Depression because it was the Depression. People were depressed. And there was like a real big mood for like escapism, especially in Hollywood. In the 30s, they made a ton of movies about like rich people having fun and doing fun stuff, which seems like poor people during the Depression would not want to watch that. Yeah. But that's what people wanted.
Okay.
They wanted to see like people having fun.
Escape.
Yeah, exactly.
From their reality. Okay, I get that.
So there was a lot of like just kind of silly fun stuff
That's like
happening.
me and the British baking show.
But at the same time, in the 30s, they started doing these sort of like, I guess, adventure sort of action films set in like...
These like island locations?
Yeah, in the South Pacific. And also some kind of like romance movies set in the South Pacific, usually specifically centered in either Hawaii or Polynesia.
So this is like Anna and the King sort of situation?
That came later, but yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. But the similar idea. Yeah, exactly. So that started at the beginning of the 30s. By the time Prohibition was repealed in 1933, California was primed and ready for a restaurateur named Ernest Beaumont Gant to open a Polynesian-themed restaurant and bar in Hollywood called Don the Beachcomber. This is when Tiki, as we know it, really officially started to blow up. So his restaurants actually blew up so quickly and so big that Ernest Beaumont Gant officially changed his name legally to Don Beach because his restaurants were called Don the Beachcomber.
Wow.
Yes.
That's crazy.
The Beachcomber restaurants featured Cantonese food and a big menu of exotic rum cocktails and rum punches with a decor of like flaming torches that we would now know as tiki torches, rattan furniture, floral leis, colorful wallpapers and fabrics, and these like carved tiki masks and wooden sculptures of Polynesian gods all over the place.
Uh-oh.
Yeah. So these were modeled after traditional Polynesian carvings that focused on the history and mythology and culture of the South Pacific.
Yeah.
And they were putting them in the restaurants as like, isn't these like heathens? Isn't it fun? Isn't it cute? You know?
Yeah.
In the beginning, in the 30s, these restaurants were not called tiki restaurants or tiki bars or tiki cocktails. In the beginning, the cocktails were called rum rhapsodies.
Oh, I like that.
The name tiki came later, but that name is actually the name of the first man on Earth in Maori mythology. Oh. So he's like the Maori Adam. Basically, yeah. Tiki.
Oh, no.
Yes.
Oh, no.
So today there is a bit of a debate about whether the resurgence of tiki bars is just like kitschy fun, harkening back to Hollywood's golden years, or is it cultural appropriation?
It can be both.
Or racism. Yeah.
Yeah.
It is
can be
both.
all of those things.
Yeah. But the like restaurant culture and the way they're decorated.
Yeah, the decor is a problem.
Yeah, exactly. One article said, though tiki culture and Polynesian pop has pulled substantial influence from traditional Polynesian culture, it was never intended in any sense to represent it. Rather, tiki style was a reflection of the American experience of the South Pacific. That's gross.
Yeah, I was about to say, whoa.
Yeah, so you're trying to defend it by saying, like, it's not about Polynesian people that we're borrowing their culture. This is not just cultural appropriation. We're talking cultural erasure.
Definitely.
And you're not only taking Polynesian culture away from Polynesian peoples, but you're also celebrating American imperialism and colonialism.
Yes. That's so gross.
Yes.
It's so awful that this person probably had no idea.
And he's like, I'm defending our use of tiki imagery in these restaurants by saying this.
And it's like, how many people read that? Like his editor's like, yeah, totally.
Yeah, I know, right?
Me too. Great job, Ken.
Of course, this was the 1930s that this was happening, and no one cared.
No one gave a shit.
No one cared.
Yeah.
Tiki was here to stay, and it kept growing. So it started in the 30s. It really kind of blew up in the late 40s after World War II. In 1936, another restaurant owner, also from California, but from Oakland, named Victor Bergeron, had eaten at the Don the Beachcomber restaurant in Hollywood. And in his biography, he wrote, when I got back to Oakland, I told my wife what I'd seen, and we agreed to change the name of our restaurant and our decor. So they named their restaurant Trader Vic's. And this guy's name was already Victor, but he started going by Trader Vic. Like, I don't know why people thought that they needed to name themselves after their restaurants, but that's what was happening.
Okay.
As the restaurants got more and more popular, especially the Don the Beachcomber one in Hollywood started flocking to the restaurants. They were always filled with starlets, actors, producers, whatever.
Okay.
But then Hollywood was making more and more of these movies about Polynesian
culture.
Locales and So they were building off each other. The restaurants got more popular because of the popularity of the movies. The movies got more popular because of the popularity of the restaurants. And they kind of built their own culture that was like separate from what it was supposed to be about. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like they were just building off each other more than actual Polynesian traditions.
Exactly.
Which is good. My biggest thing that I don't like is the carvings and the masks.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. Especially if it's of their gods. Like,
totally. What? Yeah. It's so weird. So then there was World War II. As the American servicemen started returning home from the war, many of them were stationed in the South Pacific.
Yeah.
So they brought back, after 1945, they brought back these stories about the South Pacific, souvenirs from the South Pacific. And then that's when it really started to blow up. People were suddenly interested in tropical vacations in a way they never really had before.
Of course.
Interested in all things tropical.
Yeah.
There was also in the 40s a rise in the middle class after the Depression was finally over.
When did we steal Hawaii? I'm like, this feels related.
Yeah, it came in phases.
Okay, yeah.
But I think the end of the 1800s. But Hawaii didn't really become like a tourist destination until like the 40s.
Oh, until after this.
Yeah.
Damn.
Also, after World War II, there was a rise in the middle class. People suddenly had money to spend on like going out to dinner in a way that they hadn't during the Depression, during the 30s, or during the war. They also had money to spend on tropical vacations, so people were really into it. The restaurants continued to grow in popularity through the 50s, through the 60s. It got crazy. There was tiki restaurants all over the country. Trader Vic's and Don the Beachcomber were the two big names that everyone knew, but those were mostly just based in California. And then copycats started popping up all around the country.
Right?
Yeah. By the 70s, it started to feel a little stale, a little corny.
Yes.
It was like
camp.
Yeah, it was the thing that like your parents wanted to go and do, but the young people in the 70s were like, no, this is not for us.
Yeah.
So the trend finally started to die in the 70s.
Okay.
And by the 80s, it was like nobody cared. The only thing that was really left was some of the cocktail, like the Blue Hawaiian we drink in our 80s episode. But even a lot of the cocktails kind of fell away too, because the whole tiki thing just felt so corny. The few that stayed were like the Mai Tai, the Blue Hawaiian,
Is pina colada?
Pina colada, that's sort of more Puerto Rico than South Pacific, but it would still be considered a tiki drink because it has so much fruit and rum in it.
Okay, so that's the marker of a tiki cocktail.
So there's been a resurgence lately of tiki bars popping up. Restaurants, people aren't really doing tiki restaurants in the way that they used to, but there's a lot of tiki bars. There's one in Bushwick now. There's also, when Russell and I were in Palm Springs last fall, we went to a tiki-themed gay bar in Palm Springs called Toucans to see a drag show. And it was really fun, but they had the tiki carvings all over the place. Yeah. I mean, if it was just like tropical themed, I would have no problem with that.
Absolutely not. Yeah.
Like use grass skirts on the top of the bar or whatever. Have the masks and stuff, the flowers. Yeah. Just don't have the carvings.
Don't have the carvings.
Yeah.
We know better now.
Exactly.
We should know better now.
Any tiki bar owners out there listening, please get rid of the masks and the carvings.
You don't need them.
No.
Just keep the drinks.
So let's get focused on tiki cocktails.
Yes. I'm so thirsty over here.
Don the Beachcomber was the first restaurateur to ever focus an entire drink menu on rum, specifically on mixing rums with flavored syrups and fresh fruit juices. I think I mentioned this already, but he called them rum rhapsodies in the beginning. Back then, rum was really cheap. There was a lot of it, but it was not popular. I think I've mentioned this when they did the daiquiri thing, that a lot of people kind of looked down on rum as like something for poor people, something for like sailors to drink.
Oh, yes.
No one was really drinking it. Beach realized that if he started mixing rums together to create sort of more subtle flavors and mixing them with fruit juices, not only could he create an entire new species of cocktails, he could also get people interested in rum in a way that they never really had. It was risky because if it failed, it would have failed hard.
Yeah.
But it was also like rum was so cheap at the time that like
true.
He was going to make money no matter what. Yeah. And it blew up. So he did it right. It's the novelty. It's fun. Some of them were served. You would float some overproof rum and set it on fire.
Yeah.
It would be served in a really big fancy glass. It would be served like in a hollowed out pineapple, in a coconut, even later in the 60s, they had those big like fishbowl sized punch glasses that you would have like a big straws and everybody could drink from the same cocktail. Yeah.
Oh, cool. Okay. So it's like a social, it's like fun.
Yeah. It's a novelty. Yeah. It's all about fun and something different. As the popularity of the cocktails grew, they started adding more and more new cocktails to their menus, both Trader Vic's and On the Beachcomber. They started giving the cocktails these like tropical and sometimes like dangerous sounding names to make it feel exciting. Some of the more famous tiki cocktails that a lot of people may have heard of are the Pearl Diver, the Shark's Tooth, the Zombie, Corpse Reviver, Scorpion Bowl. These are all like really big in the 50s and 60s. Perhaps the most famous tiki cocktail ever, though, is the Mai Tai.
Yes.
So finally, we're getting to what we're drinking today. We are drinking Mai Tais.
Finally.
So the original Mai Tai was invented in 1944 by Trader Vic in Oakland, California.
Oh, so this is his cocktail.
Yes.
Okay, cool.
Don Beach later accused Trader Vic of stealing his recipe, saying that his punch, the QB Cooler, which he invented in 1933, was suspiciously similar. But it's not the same. This is the thing. I've looked up the recipe for the QB Cooler. There's like twice as many ingredients. There's all this extra stuff in it that is not in Trader Vic's Mai Tai. So I feel like it was probably inspired by, but it's like, a very different cocktail. Yeah. Vic Bergeron, when he later wrote his biography, he wrote, "Anyone who says I didn't create this drink is a dirty stinker."
Oh, wow.
Dirty stinker. Should we try the first one? The 1944 original Mai Tai?
Yeah, let's cheers the original Mai Tai.
So this is our first ever episode where we're trying two different cocktails.
Yeah.
Ta-da. So it's sweet, but it's not super sweet.
It's not super sweet.
Yeah. It's mostly lime juice and rum with a little curacao and orgeat. Curacao is like a fancy triple sec. Orgeat is an almond, like a French almond syrup that's been around for forever.
Yeah, almond like marzipan. Really, really sticky sweet.
Yeah, we'll put a link in our show notes if anyone wants to get some.
That.
It's very like liquor heavy. It's very rum flavored.
It tastes like rum.
When he created this drink, the whole point was to highlight the flavor of one specific type of 17-year-old aged Jamaican rum called Wray and Nephew. The Mai Tai almost immediately blew up in popularity, and it became so popular that the world's supply of 17-year-old Wray and Nephew was completely depleted within like a year.
Fuck.
So then he started using a 15-year-old Wray and Nephew instead, and then that ran out too. So then he started having to mix rums himself to try and get some kind of similar flavor.
Like a blend.
So now most recipes you're going to find for the original Mai Tai recipes just say mix light rum and dark rum together. And then nobody really says use this specific one.
Okay.
Most recipes you're going to find the body of the cocktail is made with white rum and then you do a dark rum float on top. And it looks really cool.
It looks very pretty.
Yeah. So in the beginning, they're super rum focused. But in the 1950s, in 53, this cruise company started going to Hawaii, opened a bunch of hotels, and they hired Vic Bergeron to lead their cocktail program at their hotels in Hawaii.
Okay.
They wanted to really get people to come to Hawaii, so they're like, oh, we have tiki bars in Hawaii.
Have, like, the expert, the Mr. Tiki.
Yeah, Mr. Mai Tai. So they're like, we want a Mai Tai, but we want it to feel more Hawaiian. So he added, tweaked his recipe. It was still lime, still rum, but then he added orange juice and pineapple juice. And a little grenadine, or you can also use the syrup from like maraschino cherries for a little color. It not only made it feel more Hawaiian, it also made it a lot sweeter. A lot less rum flavored, even though there's actually more rum in that one than there is in the first. Because it's a bigger drink. There's more liquid. It's more tourist friendly because it's sweeter and less boozy tasting. So, like old white people would totally be into drinking it.
Yeah.
This is the Mai Tai recipe that everyone today knows. When you're drinking a Mai Tai at a bar, you're going to get the one with the orange juice and pineapple juice.
This is the one that looks familiar.
Yes, exactly.
When you made the first one, I was just like, oh,
that's
maybe
not
I've
a Mai
never
Tai.
had a Mai Tai.
Yeah, exactly. So now we're going to taste the 1950s version of the Mai Tai.
So did you do like full sweetness? Because I know sometimes you like to edit things.
This is the full sweet recipe.
Down.
It is sweet.
Okay.
It's not crazy sweet though. It just doesn't taste as boozy.
It tastes like juice.
There's a lot of juice in it. It's good though, right?
It's really good.
Do you have a preference?
I kind of like the second one.
The second one tastes a lot easier to drink because it doesn't taste so rummy.
And I like the taste of rum, but also sugar is my favorite drink. By far.
But
sorry, booze.
Yeah. If people are at home and want to drink along with us, I think that the pineapple one is the one that people are going to go for.
It's a little bit more accessible unless you love rum.
It has a lot more ingredients in it, though, so you're going to have to buy orange juice, pineapple juice, grenadine, orgeat syrup, curacao, and 2 different kinds of rum.
Okay, let's do the first one.
They both have a lot of ingredients in them because these were drinks that you're getting at a restaurant. You're not making this at home generally.
I think the first one is prettier.
It is, yeah.
It's so classy looking.
Yeah. So the second one, the one from the 50s, of course, it's from Hawaii. It has pineapple juice in it. This is sort of like a little aside, but in my research on the cocktail, I stumbled across this story about how in the 1700s, especially in America, but also in Europe, pineapples were considered like this rare luxury item.
I can see that.
They were so rare and so luxurious that they were usually used just for decoration, not to be eaten. If they were eaten, you wouldn't eat them until they started to rot. Because when it was still fresh, it was too valuable to be eaten as a beautiful centerpiece or whatever it was. They were so luxurious that in the 1700s, they could go for up to $8,000 a piece in today's money.
What?
Yes, one pineapple.
Who was getting these pineapples?
Rich people. It was like a way to show off, like, I have the money to buy an $8,000 pineapple, so I'm going to.
Wow.
But then because that became a thing, there was a rental market for pineapples. So you could,
that is amazing.
If you were going to have a party and you wanted to show off how fancy and rich you were, you would rent a pineapple for the night of your party, plunk it on your table So people would be like, ooh, a pineapple. And then when the party was over, you return it to be rented out to the next party the next day.
That is amazing.
Yeah.
What an amazing service.
I know.
It's like Rent the Runway, but for pineapples.
Exactly, yeah. And then they would just keep renting it out until it started to rot. And then they'd either throw it away or maybe somebody might eat it.
You said the 1700s?
Yeah.
Wow, that is amazing.
So you may have guessed this already. You started asking questions about Hawaii.
Oh, no.
Today we're going to be talking about Hawaii.
Oh, no.
When I was a kid at school learning the golden rule, teacher often used to say, if you don't tell a lie, there's not a reason why you can't be like Washington someday. How could Washington be a married man and never tell a lie?
You love South Pacific sadness.
I do.
You know?
That is the theme of season 2, South Pacific sadness.
Every time you do a fruity cocktail, I'm like, oh no, is he going back to Bikini Atoll? I can't handle it. That's definitely your thing.
Mm-hmm.
What is my thing? I guess I've done a lot of CIA declassified sort of like operations.
Yeah.
Okay, why?
And the Trail of Tears stuff is also like...
yeah, that is my thing too.
Your depressing one that you like to revisit.
I know. The horror.
So today we're going to be talking about Hawaii. Long before they became a state, Hawaii was a sovereign nation with a queen,
yes,
a democratically elected legislature, and ambassadors all over the world.
Fuck, really?
Yes.
Damn it.
But in 1893, the Hawaiian Monarchy was overthrown by a powerful group of white Hawaiian businessmen and foreign-born sugar and pineapple plantation owners.
I'm already so sad.
Yeah, it's going to be one of those.
Hopefully there'll be some shorts mentioned, and I can cackle.
Some historians speculate that Hawaii was discovered by seafaring Polynesians paddling double-hulled canoes, perhaps as early as 200 AD.
Yeah.
The first British explorers didn't bump into Hawaii until 1778. They discovered, quote unquote, discovered Hawaii. At the time, the different...
Sorry to interrupt you.
Yeah.
But there's this really amazing meme about Christoper Columbus.
Oh,
Have you seen that one?
Yeah. It'd be a shame if somebody discovered it.
It's like a close-up of his eyes.
Yeah.
Nice country you got there. It'd be a shame if someone discovered it. Go on, I'm sorry.
So at the time... In 1778, when they first had contact with Europe, the different islands of the archipelago were ruled by different chiefs. Like each island had its own chief ruling.
But they were all under the queen, correct?
No, there was no queen. There was no kingdom. It was just set up as chiefdoms at the time. They're close, so they were probably in communication and maybe traded with one another, but each island was ruled separately. Mm-hmm. Within 30 years of introduction to European meddling, and the introduction of firearms.
Yep, that's how you properly meddle.
The separate chiefdoms had been reduced to a single kingdom within 30 years.
Wait, it went from how many to one?
8 or so chiefdoms down to one kingdom in 1810 under King Kamehameha I.
Okay.
Firearms were not the only fun and disruptive gifts that Europeans were generous enough. Yes.
Oh, yay. Because they don't wash their legs.
Yes, exactly. Yes. Gravity, Stephanie.
I'm sorry. You're like ever hoid of it?
So they were generous enough to bestow upon the Hawaiian natives the first venereal diseases.
Oh, wow. Yeah. How lovely for them.
The first mosquitoes. In Hawaii, and wonderful deadly pandemics like smallpox and measles.
Yeah.
So generous, so lovely of them.
Yes, they just like to share.
Yeah.
Just givers,
Within just a few decades, 75% of the population had fallen victim to one disease or another.
75%?
75%.
Yeah, I guess because you're an island.
You're an island. There's nowhere to go,
defenses for diseases from livestock.
Yeah.
Damn.
This, of course, was also the age of imperialism. Hawaii was trying to struggle to maintain their sovereignty, but if you're a white explorer, what's the fun in killing 75% of the population if you can't also profit off their land?
Yeah.
You got to make a profit.
You gotta.
So Europe was sniffing around. Hawaii is trying to maintain their sovereignty, but it was the American taste for sugar and pineapples that got them in the end.
Fuck.
Almost immediately after
I
the
love
first...
that we were addicted to sugar back then.
From the beginning. Yeah. We built a Caribbean slave trade off of our obsession with sugar and molasses. And So almost immediately after the first introduction to the white world, Hawaii's biggest export became sugar, almost right away. The first permanent sugar cane plantation was set up in 1835, and within 30 years, sugar had completely altered Hawaii's economy.
So they weren't exporting anything prior to this.
They were
just like hunter-gatherers.
Completely unaware of the outside world at this point.
They didn't know that they needed to make that money?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. We went from like 30 years having chiefdom to a kingdom, and then once there was a kingdom, then they're like, oh yeah, there's an outside world to trade with, and we're going to make that money. And then they started growing sugar, and then the money started coming in, and things started changing really quickly. As these sugar plantations started popping up on the islands, a lot of them were owned by European white settlers,
of course.
Or there was a lot of American missionaries that would come, and they would start having kids. The kids would become businessmen.
That's the first wave. They're like, no, we don't want business, but I guess we'll let a few missionaries in. And it's like, you done fucked up.
Yeah, exactly. So as you can imagine, American-born plantation owners were totally cool living under a monarchy ruled by brown people on a tiny, unprotected island nation, right?
Yeah,
they loved it.
They're like, finally.
Yes, this is exactly what I wanted all my life.
I love
brown people to be on top.
Yes. It's like, here's some guns for you guys to just like keep everything in order.
Yeah. Almost immediately, the white people started whining that they weren't being fairly represented. That they deserved more power because they were paying taxes to the Hawaiian kingdom. They were bringing in jobs and money into the Hawaiian economy. So they basically deserved to be on top because they showed up and started exploiting their land and making money for themselves.
Yeah.
So, that gets them a say.
I love that there were just Karens back then,
Yes.
At like PTA meetings or City Hall.
Excuse me.
She brings her own mic.
I'd like to speak to the manager of Hawaii, please.
Yes. So but why did they think they weren't being represented? What does that even mean? Like they wanted...
Because there was a kingdom and they didn't get to have a say in the politics. Like they wanted to write policy because they were living there and they were making money, but they were paying taxes to a brown king.
Okay.
There was a brief occupation by the British in 1843. It only lasted 5 months before Hawaii was able to kind of kick the British out and become a sovereign nation once again. America. So
most of the business people there are American.
It's a mix. There's a lot of them were descendants of American missionaries.
Okay.
But because there was the sugar industry and the pineapple industry was still growing.
Yeah.
And it was global. There were a lot of like first generation immigrants from Europe, from America coming and moving to Hawaii
there for the opportunity to exploit brown people.
Yes.
Got it.
And then complain that they didn't have enough power. Mm-hmm.
It's like, if you want power, go back to where you came from.
Exactly. But there's not like virgin land to exploit where you came from.
Yeah.
America formally recognized Hawaii's independence in 1846, which I feel like is kind of a weird thing, but it was after...
Independence from what?
Because they had just kicked the British out in 1843.
Did the British own
Well,
Hawaii?
the British occupied the islands in 1843, but just for a short time. 5 months before they kicked them back out. So America was like, well, I guess you guys are an independent sovereign nation. It's fine. You guys can be independent. We'll trade with you or whatever. And as a sign of good faith, the Hawaiian kingdom entered into treaties with most of the major world players.
Okay.
They set up consulates with ambassadors in seaports and cities around the globe.
Cool.
Then shortly after this, America started rubbing their chin. They're like, oh, wait, their location in the South Pacific would make a great spot for a military base. Why did we say that they could be independent? What were we thinking?
Our bad.
Yeah. So to try to Not. So to try to put the squeeze on Hawaii, they raised the import tax on Hawaiian sugar like through the roof. Crazy. All of a sudden, out of nowhere, they're like, oh, wait, import taxes. Ha ha. We've got you now. So a tariff would be like the people buying it would pay the tariff.
Pay it. Yeah.
A tax is on the people exporting it. America had its eye on Ford Island, which is a small island in the middle of Pearl Harbor. But it's just this one standalone island in the middle of the harbor. They kind of were like, hey, maybe if you give us Ford Island, we'll reduce this import tax. That's
so fucked up.
Yeah. So there was this foreigner who had married into the Kamehameha family, and he was trying to convince the king that he should just sell America Ford Island to try and get this import tax reduced. The king apparently had a crystal ball because he was like, this seems like a bad idea because if we sell Ford Island to America, before long, they might take over our whole nation.
Yeah, exactly.
So we don't want to do this.
Yeah, don't listen to him.
Yeah, exactly.
Shut up, Brad.
Yeah, exactly. Why did I let you marry my daughter? What the fuck, right?
Brad? I never liked you.
Fast forward to 1874, like 3 decades later. The king died. He left no heirs.
He had no kids?
He had no children of his own. So the democratically elected legislature of Hawaii got to choose the next monarch.
Okay.
So they chose David Kalakaua. As soon as Kalakaua became king, the U.S. government looked to him and they're like, we're going to really put the squeeze on you.
Yeah.
He had the same kind of reservations as his predecessors.
So they're still asking for the island?
Yes, they still wanted Ford Island. Kalakaua was like, no, you guys are this is not going to end well. But Hawaii had been feeling the effects of these steep import taxes for over 30 years, or almost 30 years, on their main export. So they're like, we really need that money. We really need to not pay this crazy export tax.
But it's only with trade to the U.S., correct?
But there was...
Like, are the British doing this
There
too?
were some kind of treaties set up that, like, the U.S. was our main trading partner. I think it also has a lot to do with proximity because the other closest countries to them would have been Asia. Yeah. And I don't think they were really interested in sugar as much as America was, you know?
They wanted to keep their teeth?
Why, though? Sugar's good. So King Kalakaua, he tried to resist for a little bit, but then he was like, you know what? I'm going to go to D.C. I'm going to try to negotiate a treaty that will be mutually beneficial for both nations.
No. Bless his sweetheart.
Yes. The Reciprocity Treaty was signed in 1875. It had a term of 7 years. The terms were basically tax-free importation of sugar to the U.S. in exchange for control of Ford Island, American control of Ford Island. Surprise, surprise, things were not as great as they seemed like they might be. First glance, yeah. At first glance, it did kind of seem like it was going to be really good. Sugar production grew exponentially. A lot of money started flooding into the kingdom in a way that it never really had before. Revenue into the kingdom increased more than 7-fold. Like, a lot of fucking money started flowing through the kingdom. Yeah.
7 times the money?
Yeah, exactly. Overnight.
Uh-oh.
But then if you really kind of zoom in, the problem was that the people that were starting up these new sugar plantations and expanding the current sugar plantations were not native Hawaiians. Yeah. They were Americans. They were Europeans. Yeah. They were the children of missionaries, white people living on the islands that lived outside of traditional Hawaiian culture. Were trying to sort of like build an American or European culture on the islands.
Yikes. So they weren't like putting money into the community.
Not really. Like the kingdom was getting money because they were paying taxes. But the average native Hawaiian wasn't really seeing much benefit to this. Within 5 years of the signing of this treaty, one San Francisco man owned almost one-third of the entire sugar production of Hawaii. 1/3. One man from San Francisco.
What?
Yeah. Just because he had capital to grow sugar plantations. He built them so quickly and bought land so quickly that he like was a kingpin.
Wow.
Yeah.
I'm like stunned by that. That's insane.
Shortly after they signed this treaty, domestic sugar producers in the U.S. started complaining that Hawaiian sugar was being given an unfair advantage. I'm like, shut up, dude.
How? Yeah,
I don't know. Because their American-grown sugar was no longer like the cheapest sugar on the market. And they were like, what the fuck? So when the first 7 years was up, America went back and was like, hey, you know what? You guys are doing pretty well. So I think that we should get better terms and more land if we're going to sign.
Land?
Yeah. Because they only had this little island in the harbor at this point. And they're like, we want all of Pearl Harbor.
But y'all are doing fine.
Yeah.
With this one.
Nope. They wanted all of Pearl Harbor. They wanted to expand their naval base. So in my mind, I'm like, okay, if I were Hawaii, I would be like, okay, you're welcome to go fuck yourself.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
You're welcome to get the fuck off our island and give us Ford Island back, and we'll just find a new trading partner.
7 years. Oh, 7 years is
Yeah.
up. Bye, guys.
Sorry about it.
Yeah.
But by this point, Hawaii had devoted almost 4/5 of all arable land on the islands to sugar production. And without...
Wait. 4/5?
4/5 of all arable land was being used to grow sugar cane.
Where are the people living? On these, like, plantations?
There were not that many people living in Hawaii. I think it was something like 40,000 people across all the islands.
All the islands, okay.
Yeah.
That's crazy, though.
So they were like, okay, we could tell them to go fuck themselves, but, like, obviously they're our closest trading partner that wants sugar. So it's going to be really expensive to ship it to Europe. And it's going to be a big headache if we don't go with America as our trading partner. And now we're producing all the sugar, and if we don't have anywhere to send it, what are we supposed to do? Their economy would have collapsed.
Yeah, instantly.
Yeah. And the king had gotten really used to all this extra money coming in and had started building a new palace.
Oh. Huh.
And he had dug himself and the kingdom into deep debt. Because there was so much money coming in so quickly. He was like, I'm just going to go into debt because I'll have more money next year, you know. But then America wanted more land, and he was like, oh, fuck. So apparently, I guess for a couple years, they extended the treaty on a year-by-year basis as they were renegotiating. Yeah. And I think it was like 5 years later in 1887, finally they agreed to lease Pearl Harbor to the United States, in addition to Ford Island.
For another 7-year stint?
Yeah.
Okay.
And you would think that this would be like, the white people would be satisfied, everything would be good.
Yeah, we got something new.
Yeah.
Something extra.
But that was America. We're not talking about the white missionary children living on Hawaii that were still whining that they didn't have enough power over Hawaiian politics. Basically, within months of the signing of this new treaty, the mostly white, non-Hawaiian members of the missionary party staged a rebellion led by Lauren Thurston and Sanford Dole.
This is not what Jesus would do. Let the record reflect this.
Sanford Dole's cousin James would later go on to found...
As in like Dole?
His cousin James later started the Hawaiian Pineapple Company, which was later renamed the Dole Food Company. And we can thank Mr. Dole for the pineapple juice in our Mai Tais today.
Why are you trying to make me sick, Tom?
Yes. So they were from the missionary party, which meant they were like grandsons of American missionaries. Then Lauren Thurston.
So are they considered American at this
No,
point?
they are Hawaiian because they are born and bred and raised on Hawaiian soil.
And it's
they're
sovereign,
not American. Yeah.
Yeah, still then. Okay.
So they're just considered white Hawaiians. And Lauren Thurston was the Hawaiian Minister of the Interior at this point, because he had grown up on the islands and white people could run for office. So they did have some control of the government, but not enough. So because Lauren Thurston had control over the Hawaiian militia as the Minister of the Interior, he went over to Mr. King Kalakaua and was like, hey, guess what? I'm going to have the militia kill you if you don't sign a new constitution. I control the militia. A lot of the members of the militia are white Hawaiians.
I was just about to ask.
Yes.
I'm like, they're whites, aren't they? Mm-hmm.
So if you don't sign this new constitution, you will get dead. The new constitution is lovingly referred to as the Bayonet Constitution because it was signed under duress, the threat of assassination.
How is that legal?
I mean, it's not, but who's going to stop them? He has control of the militia, and they're a sovereign nation.
I did not know that this is how it happened.
Yeah. And this was kind of only the beginning.
Oh, fuck!
But wait, there's more.
The fact that this Minister of the Interior is in control of, like, a mostly white militia.
Yeah.
Like,
Good
how
times.
did you let this happen?
Because he was
busy
looking
redecorating
and building a new palace.
Yeah.
He was bathing in tax monies.
I just wish that he had like a older sister who is always just like, look at this shit that's happening.
Yeah. Well, he actually did have I think she was a younger sister
Okay.
who will come in to play.
Yeah, you need like a brown woman to just be like,
Yeah.
like, I'm gonna dead this minister of the interior. Like, he doesn't look right.
Yeah, right? If only she'd stepped up to the plate earlier. But so this bayonet constitution is signed. It basically deemed the king little more than a figurehead. It also drastically changed the political power structure in Hawaii.
So did they just like write this whole thing for him?
The white
basically?
people wrote it
Yeah.
and said, you sign this or you die. It also stripped many of the native Hawaiian people of the right to vote in their own country.
What?
There were suddenly voting requirements.
What?
You had to own property valuing at least $3,000 in like 1890 money, or an annual income of no less than $600, and you had to pass a literacy test.
Okay, so they're using this formula that they use to
Over and over and over everywhere.
to disenfranchise non-whites.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
2/3 of native Hawaiians, along with a large population of Asian immigrants who had previously held the right to vote, were no longer eligible. 2/3 of the native population.
I can't believe they did this. Of course they did
Just
it. But
overnight.
like, just no one can vote. 1/3 of your population's allowed to vote now.
Yeah.
Just because the white people said so.
Yes, exactly. So it not only did it disenfranchise all the brown people, it also shifted hands into the power of the white foreign-born plantation owners. They also, because they had control over the government now and the legislature, they had control over the terms for naturalizing citizens. So previously, to become a citizen of Hawaii, you would have to renounce your citizenship. If you were an American, you had to become a Hawaiian. Or if you were a German or English, you had to become a Hawaiian to be eligible to vote, to be eligible to run for office.
Okay.
But with the white people in control, they were like, no, you know what? We're getting rid of that rule. You can remain a German citizen and you can vote in Hawaii. You can run for office in Hawaii as a German citizen.
No, stop
as long
it.
as you meet the voting requirements of owning property and being able to read.
That's disgusting and so incredibly racist.
Yes.
Holy shit.
Yeah. This is imperialism, Stephanie. There's no rules in imperialism.
Yeah. Whoa.
2 years later, 2 years into this constitution, King Kalakaua his health was suffering, and he sailed to San Francisco for his health. He ended up dying in San Francisco in 1891. And this is when his sister, Liliuokalani, stepped up to the throne. She became the queen.
Okay.
She almost immediately started drafting a new constitution to replace the bayonet constitution. She wanted to restore the monarchy's power. And she wanted to return voting rights to Hawaiian natives and naturalized Hawaiian citizens.
Obviously. It sounds like she wants a democracy.
Yeah.
What?
So she went around the islands on horseback, trying to drum up support and getting signatures to support her new constitution. She had overwhelming support from most of the people living on the islands. But the white people were like, no, we're in control. You don't get to do this. Nice try, goodbye. Then in 1893, word got out that she was considering replacing the bayonet constitution with her new one by royal decree.
Good.
Word got out, and a 13-member secret society called the Hawaiian League decided to start hatching a plan to remove her from the throne.
The Hawaiian League, they're all whites, right?
Oh, 100%.
Okay.
Brace yourselves.
It's like the Klan is like, hey,
Yes.
you guys, we're going to call ourselves the Hawaiian League.
Yes. They were all white.
Yes.
Big surprise. They were all male. Even bigger surprise.
Of course.
And they included white Hawaiians like Lauren Thurston and Sanford Dole.
Obviously.
Along with a few American, British, and German politicians and businessmen who were heavily invested in Hawaii's sugar industry. Surprise!
Yeah.
Shock.
Very shocked.
Yes. So a detective found out about this plot to have the queen deposed and told the queen's marshal. And so Liliuokalani went to her cabinet and wanted to issue a warrant for the Hawaiian League's arrests.
Yeah.
The cabinet feared violence and denied this request. Many of the cabinet members were also tied to these businessmen in some way or another.
Okay.
There was also another group called the Committee of Safety. Many of the Hawaiian League's members were also members of this Committee of Safety. When I say safety, I mean the safety of white property owners living in Hawaii.
Real safety.
Yes. So the Committee of Safety goes to John Stevens, who is the U.S. minister to Hawaii. He's living in Hawaii, but he is a United States citizen and the minister to Hawaii. And they go to Stevens and they say, we need your help. We need to keep our shit safe from the big mean queen. She's trying to take what is rightfully hers back from us.
She wants to give her citizens the right to vote.
The audacity of this brown woman.
She does not know her place.
Yes. On January 16th, Stevens ordered a nearby Navy ship to land troops on Honolulu.
What?
To secure the safety of American life and property in Hawaii.
Oh, that sounds very familiar.
Yes.
Very, very familiar. We're just having this naval warship just in case to keep all the peace.
Yes, exactly.
We just need a battleship to keep the peace.
Out of nowhere, on January 16th at around 5 p.m., Queen Liliuokalani watches as over 120 armed U.S. Marines and sailors march past her palace and set up camp a few hundred yards away. Another 40 men stood guard outside of Stevens' residence because he is a cowardly little bitch.
What a motherfucker. What a little...
You fucking punk. 40 guards outside your house?
Yeah. I guess I shouldn't be surprised.
Yeah.
The man is probably afraid of his own shadow.
The very next day, there was this big cart, covered up cart, on its way to the Committee of Safety's headquarters. And an unarmed Hawaiian policeman stops the cart and tries to investigate, and it's filled with guns. He is somehow shot in the shoulder, and he didn't die, but he's an unarmed native Hawaiian policeman. There's a scuffle, there's a huge chaos, and in the commotion, a bunch of the leaders of the Committee of Safety just mysteriously run up to the government buildings, which are across the street from the palace.
Mysterious.
And they just take over. They are like, you know what? We're here.
Yeah, hey guys.
We now have control of the Hawaiian government.
This is ours.
So they officially announce that they are now in charge of the government pending annexation by the United States.
What does that mean?
They're going to ask the United States to annex Hawaii as a American territory.
I know this is an audio medium, but I am weeping.
Yeah, I know. Hilarious.
I had heard about this scandal. Maybe even from you. I think, you told me about how they used to have a queen and that they basically just stole the islands.
Yeah.
But this is so insane.
Right?
Oh my God.
It's a good thing we have 2 cocktails for this segment.
Yeah, I am almost done with my first one, and I'm
going back and forth. I'm like halfway through both.
Yeah, wow. Just wow.
So as U.S. Minister, Stevens decided that he had the authority to immediately recognize the new provisional government with Sanford Dole at its head.
Stop it.
Yes.
No.
Yes.
What?
And Stevens is like, he didn't consult with anyone from the U.S. He was just like, no, let's do it. There's a new government.
The caucasity.
Right? Yeah. He's like, obviously the white people in America are going to be like, yes, this is the right move.
I mean, he wasn't wrong.
Yeah.
I guess. I mean, we'll hear.
Yeah.
Wow.
So at this time, Liliuokalani, the queen, had hundreds of native Hawaiian men on her side that were willing to fight for Hawaiian sovereignty and willing to fight for the monarchy.
Yeah.
But
they didn't have weapons, right?
They didn't have the same numbers and they didn't have the weapons.
Yeah.
The Committee of Safety had over 1,500 armed men who were former members of a disbanded all-white militia known as the Honolulu Rifles, who had been involved in the first coup when they signed the Bayonet Constitution.
White men and guns.
Right? So the queen is level-headed. So Queen Liliuokalani, she's like, you know what? This fucking sucks. But to avoid bloodshed, I'm going to give in. I'm going to surrender, and I'm going to order my forces to surrender.
She did the right thing.
Yeah. She released an official statement saying To avoid any collision of armed forces and perhaps the loss of life, I yield my authority until such a time as the government of the United States shall, upon facts being presented to it, undo the actions of its representatives and reinstate me.
Bless her heart.
I know. I mean, she believed in the lies that America tells about life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
A lot of people believe in the lies that this country tells about itself, but I would just hope that as a brown woman that you would be very suspicious.
Yeah.
But
what other options did she have?
She wanted to protect her people, and they forced her, basically.
Exactly. Yeah, they had threatened to kill her brother.
Yeah, she was going to die.
Yeah, exactly. But so then the new provisional government is trying to get America to annex Hawaii. Stevens writes to the United States Secretary of State, trying to convince him that annexing is the move. He wrote in this letter, and I quote, "The Hawaiian pear is now fully ripe, and this is the golden hour for the United States to pluck it."
I hate him.
Right?
I hate him so much.
You fucking turd.
Because you know that he was so like giddy writing that.
He's like, ooh, I'm so smooth.
I'm so funny.
Yeah.
Like, I should do stand-up, you guys. Yeah. Like, I'm that funny.
Oh, he's such a turd.
Yeah. I don't like the word turd, but sometimes it fits.
Yes. This man is a turd.
He is a turd.
I love the word turd. I use it all the time.
You use it all the time. I think the first time I actually agreed with turd is when I heard Turd Cruz. I'm like,
yes,
that is accurate. Yeah. Mm-hmm, I 100% agree with this. Before that, I'm like, turd is for kids.
I think that's why I like it, because it's so juvenile that, like...
It's like titties.
Tiddies. With a D. Or with two Ds. Yes. That letter has one T and two Ds. Or that word. Yeah. So anyway, Stevens is trying to get the U.S. to annex Hawaii. At the time, Benjamin Harris was the president. At the time of the coup.
Who?
Yeah, exactly. I know. Literally. Who the fuck are you talking about?
Tux is testing me.
Neville
that man is not real.
Is this a real president? Wait a minute. Bob Schmeckel is the president of the United States of America.
He was 31. Yeah, I remember. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Social studies. Totally. And so on.
School, etc. But so he's the president of the U.S. at the time of the coup. And it looks like there was some sort of annexation treaty in the works under Harrison and the current Secretary of State, who was ready to pluck the Hawaiian pear. But his term was almost over, and before Hawaii was officially annexed, President Grover Cleveland took office in March for his second term, because he had 2 non-consecutive terms. Mm-hmm. Grover Cleveland's second term officially took place in March, and Cleveland said no. He fired Stevens as the minister to Hawaii.
Wow.
And he appointed a special commissioner to investigate what had happened while he withdrew the annexation treaty.
Okay, I agree.
Yeah,
with
right?
Grover Cleveland.
Yes, Groper. Old Groper over here.
Groper. Oh.
The commissioner who was supposed to investigate the Hawaii issue, he opened one eye, and then he opened the other eye, and he was like, oh, yeah, this is wrong. Something's not right here. So he went back, and he was like, hey, Uncle Cleve.
Yeah.
No. Liliuokalani was illegally overthrown. Most Hawaiians opposed the coup.
Yeah.
So, no.
Yeah, no.
And Uncle Cleve was like, okay, yeah, no. So he and his administration said that the monarchy should be restored. Cleveland, in an address to Congress, said, the military... I need rum for this.
Rum will help.
Yes, I will. It's loosening my jaw gums.
I like that when you said that I nodded. I'm like,
yeah,
totally.
Your jaw gums.
Yeah.
Oh.
My jaw gums are also very loose.
So Cleveland tells Congress, the military demonstration upon the soil of Honolulu was, of itself, an act of war, unless made either with the consent of the government of Hawaii or for the bona fide purpose of protecting the imperiled lives and property of citizens of the United States. But there is no pretense of any such consent on the part of the government of the Queen. The existing government, instead of requesting the presence of an armed force, protested against it. And then in his 1893 State of the Union address, he also said, Upon the facts developed, it seemed to me the only honorable course for our government to pursue was to undo the wrong that had been done by those representing us.
Wow.
Yes.
The United States undid wrongs for
no.
5 seconds.
We said we were going to.
Oh.
Don't get your hopes up.
Look at me over here believing the words of
Yes.
the United States government like a sucker.
So there was a condition that the Queen refused to agree to. Cleveland wanted to give amnesty for the traitors because many of them were Americans and some of them were of American descent. And the Queen was like, you can go fuck yourself.
Yeah.
You can shove the traitors right up your asses. So she said, F that S.
Yeah.
But even if she had agreed, the new president of the provisional government, Sanford Dole, straight up refused to reinstate her anyway, so it wouldn't have mattered if she had agreed. And instead of giving in to Grover Cleveland's demand, they set up this provisional government. They called themselves the Republic of Hawaii in 1894. And their thought process was, we're just going to wait it out. Cleveland says no, but maybe the next president will if he gets out of office, or maybe he'll change his mind in a couple years or whatever. So we just need to keep control until the climate changes.
Wow.
Cleveland still insisted that the Queen should be reinstated, but he was not willing to use military force to make it happen. So basically, he did nothing. He said some words that were meaningless.
Well, because his own countrymen defied an executive order.
Yeah.
As patriots do, you guys.
Yes, exactly, yeah. In January of 1895, Liliuokalani's supporters launched a counter-revolution. They were like, well, if the U.S. isn't going to help, we're going to take matters into our own hands. Several people died. 350 people were arrested. And the counter-revolution failed. Queen Liliuokalani was forced to officially abdicate her throne.
Forced by who?
The new provisional government, headed by Sanford Dole. She was also arrested for her alleged involvement in the coup. She was convicted of treason, and she was imprisoned in the palace for 8 months before she finally traveled to the U.S. to ask for help from Cleveland and his administration.
They put her in prison for 8 months?
Yes. In the palace, but like house arrest, but still. Unfortunately, 2 years later, in 1897, President McKinley succeeded Grover Cleveland. Immediately upon taking office, McKinley decreed that the volcano Mauna Loa would be renamed Mauna McKinley.
I hate you. I'm like, did he do this? Maybe he did, but I don't know. This is crazy. That tracks.
If anyone has listened to episode 1, the very first episode, we talk about Mount McKinley.
Our first episode was so impromptu.
Yeah.
Like, we thought that we were just basically testing the mics with Tim, our producer, and we just went for it.
Yeah, it was supposed to be episode 0, but it turned out to be episode 1. Yeah. But Stephanie talks about Mount McKinley, which was also in I don't even know if it was American territory yet at that point. Was it Alaska?
It was an American territory.
It was a territory.
Yeah,
okay. Yeah.
They kept like classifying it in different ways, but yeah, it was under some sort of American. Yeah, they were in the process of stealing it.
Yes. Okay.
Basically.
Yeah, but that's how Mount McKinley got its name.
Yeah.
No, that's not what happened.
No, I'm like, wait, do we want to go into that?
Just refer to episode 1.
Yeah. McKinley didn't name it himself. Like nobody did.
Yeah, yeah.
Who was pro McKinley.
Yeah, exactly.
But go back and listen to episode 1. It's real fun.
But so what actually happened was that a year after McKinley took office, the Spanish-American War started.
Yeah.
And America was like, hey, you know what? There's a real value in having a naval base in the Pacific.
That's when we stole Puerto Rico.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. They were like, you know what? We need this naval base, so Hawaii is ours. There was a formal ceremony marking the annexation held at the Royal Palace on August 12th, 1898.
Yeah, they actually... I'm sorry to interrupt.
No.
But people celebrate McKinley because he was the first in their mind to have like an expansionist sort of view of just like wanting everything.
Turd.
Yeah.
I've said it before and I'll say it again.
You're adding him to the turd list.
Yes. My turd list is ever expanding.
He just unfurled a scroll
yes.
and added his name.
And my quill. Yes. Turd list.
Turd McKinley.
Yes. Ye oldie turdy listy.
Yes.
Okay, so there's a formal ceremony at the palace marking the annexation. Almost no Native Hawaiians attend.
Shocked.
In fact, most Native Hawaiians try to stay home to protest, including Liliuokalani herself.
Vote anyway,
yeah,
so it's like, what are we even doing here?
Yeah, the royal family, everyone stayed home in protesting of what they saw as an illegal transaction.
Yeah.
The few people who had to be out on the street that day for whatever reason wore royalist flowers in their hair and on their hats and Hawaiian flags on their breasts in protest, but, there was nothing they could do. Princess Kaiulani, the niece of Queen Liliuokalani, told the San Francisco Chronicle, "When news of the annexation came, it was bitterer than death to me. It was bad enough to lose the throne, but infinitely worse to have the flag go down." There was actually a movie made about Princess Kaiulani.
No.
Like 3 years ago. But we'll put it in the show notes.
Yeah.
It actually looks like it's sympathetic to the royal family of Hawaii at this time.
Knowing what we all know now with
Yeah.
the internet, like, how can you not be sympathetic?
Totally,
Like,
yeah.
They stole it.
Literally,
Yeah.
stole it.
Just some randos who owned sugar plantations
Yeah.
and fruit.
So 2 years later, in 1900, Hawaii was formally organized into a U.S. territory with a new government, and Sanford Dole was
No.
appointed the first governor of the Hawaiian territory.
Why does this man keep getting rewarded?
Yes. In exile, Queen Liliuokalani was advocating for a free Hawaii until her death in 1917 at the age of 79. This is not where the story ends. As a territory, things just got worse and worse for Native Hawaiians. Because Hawaii as a territory had almost no control over their own ruling, if you're a U.S. territory, you don't really get a say in the way the U.S. policy is written,
Yeah, like
including
Puerto Rico.
policy about yourself. Exactly.
Yeah.
They had only one non-voting representative in the House. And this allowed rich white plantation owners to use this territorial status to exploit the land, exploit the labor, export the gross product for maximum profit with almost no benefit for the native peoples. And then to use the profits they're making and the power that they're gaining to keep that territorial status in place. Just like you said,
it's a cycle.
So much like Puerto Rico.
Yeah.
This is sort of an aside, but this was in my notes. Puerto Rico, as a territory of the United States, has been so exploited.
Beyond belief, yeah.
Basically, almost immediately after 1900, once they became a territory, Native Hawaiian people and the non-white Hawaiian residents started pushing for statehood. Because they saw that there's a benefit for if you're going to be already
at least
annexed.
They can vote. I guess.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So the benefits are you get a voting representative in Congress and you get the right to elect your own leadership. So they wanted to push for statehood, but the plantation owners didn't want that. So the struggle continued for over 50 years.
Wow.
It basically stagnated. There were a lot of proposals sent to Congress, but most of them were...
So for 50 years, they didn't have any representation, like Native Hawaiians. And that explains
almost 60 years, yeah.
Almost 60 years. That explains all of Hawaii's development and how it's so non-native.
Totally.
All the pictures that I've seen of the island, it's just this is crazy. All these big hotels. And it's where are the natives?
In 1937, there was a congressional committee that was voting on whether or not to let Hawaii become a state. And they actually decided that Hawaii met all the requirements and qualifications for statehood. And they held a vote and they voted in favor of letting Hawaii become a state. However,
oh no,
things take a long time to happen in DC.
Yeah.
Things have to go through a lot of hands. Different people have to vote. People have to have a say.
Yeah.
There's a lot of signatures and handshakes and this and that and the other thing. This is 1937. Then there was the attack at Pearl Harbor on December 7th, 1941. Because there were a lot of Japanese people living in Hawaii at the time, the United States decided that it was not in their best interest to let Hawaii become a state because they were concerned about the suspicions they had of all the Japanese people living in Hawaii at the time. So I didn't actually realize that when Pearl Harbor was bombed, that Hawaii was not already a state. I didn't know that
either.
Yeah. I kind of thought that was the whole reason that it was such a big deal because it was an attack on U.S. soil.
But I guess it was the base.
Yes, exactly. A base is considered U.S. soil, but it was not a state. It was a territory.
That's insane. I didn't know that.
Yeah. But it'd be like if North Korea attacked a base in Puerto Rico today.
Or even Guantanamo.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Everyone would be up in arms, even though they were just cursing out Puerto Rico 5 minutes ago.
Yeah.
Then there was World War II. The push for statehood was kind of abandoned. It was picked up again after the war, but really went nowhere. It wasn't until the end of the 1950s that Hawaii finally became a state. And the reasons it was allowed to become a state are really fucking dumb. The reason is because Alaska was going to become a state. The territory of Alaska was next in line, for some reason ahead of Hawaii. But at the time, Alaska was a Democratic-leaning territory.
Okay.
And Congress was like, you know what? Hawaii is a Republican-leaning territory, so we should introduce them both as states at the same time to restore political balance.
What?
And that's the only reason that they let Hawaii become a state at that time.
It's weird that Hawaii was Republican-leaning.
This was at a time where...
This is before the switch, though.
It was 1959. But I think they're Democratic now, right? So that makes sense. Yeah.
Oh, you're right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Alaska would be Republican now.
Okay.
So it does make sense.
It makes perfect sense.
After over half a century of struggling for statehood, Hawaii became a state in 1959 under President Eisenhower. In 1993, on the 100th anniversary of the overthrow of the Hawaiian Kingdom, Bill Clinton signed a bill apologizing to Native Hawaiians on behalf of the United States for our involvement in the overthrow of the Hawaiian Kingdom.
Was it offensive, this air quotes apology?
Yeah. It does sort of represent one of the few times that the U.S. government formally stepped up and said, like, hey, sorry, like, we fucked up. But, like, it's an apology that it doesn't come with anything.
Yeah. President Obama apologized to Native people.
Yeah.
And shit was offensive.
Oh, was it?
It's written by a lawyer.
Sure.
I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll
I'm
do
sure
it as
this
a
was
scandal.
probably the same way. Yeah.
It was just like very vague and I guess any sort of acknowledgement is more than what they had previously.
Totally.
But it's like to call it an apology is like
Yeah. I mean, it's really meaningless because it doesn't come with any strings.
Yeah, exactly.
And in 1983, a decade earlier, a Native Hawaiian Study Commission released a report to Congress that found no historical, legal, or moral obligation for the United States government to provide reparations, assistance, or group rights to Native Hawaiians. In the year 2000, there was a Hawaiian senator who was trying to organize the Native Hawaiian Government Reorganization Act, which would extend sovereignty to 400,000 Native Hawaiians. In 2005, The Times described the bill saying, the measure would give Native Hawaiians equivalent legal standing to American Indians and Native Alaskans, and lead to the creation of a government body that would make decisions on their behalf. The governing body would also have the power to negotiate with federal and state authorities over the disposition of vast amounts of land and resources taken by the United States when the islands were annexed in 1898. The bill has still not passed. This was 20 years ago that he started pushing for this. It is still not passed. However, in 2016, the Interior Department passed a rule allowing Native Hawaiians to vote on establishing an indigenous government, similar to the way Native Americans have established sovereign nations. So, that's the story of Hawaii. You want to take a tropical vacation? Drink some Mai Tais on the beach?
Yeah. Hawaii, I thought that it could be cool, but then I started researching it and just seeing all these huge hotels, and every time I see this like densely populated, but it's all just resorts, I'm like, where are the natives? Where do they actually live?
Yeah.
Like this whole series of islands isn't for them.
No, it really is
all.
not. Yeah.
Yeah. So pass on Hawaii.
There are a lot of, like, relative to the population size of Hawaii, there are a lot of natives living there compared to Native Americans living in America. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There is a native presence in a way that is felt in a way that a Native American presence is really not felt in most of American society.
At least you see them.
Yeah, but they still, they don't really have much say in how things are done because the people who own these hotels are not Native Hawaiians.
No. Yeah. You love that area of the world. And
I don't know why. I mean,
it's a good story, and I'm glad that you told it because I didn't know.
Yeah.
But
I never really even, it's not that I didn't care, but I just didn't even know anything
Yeah.
about the South Pacific and the
Same.
way American imperialism had destroyed it.
Yeah.
And then once I started looking,
You're
I was
just like, it's happened
shit."
all the time.
Yeah.
Like, this is just what we do.
Yeah.
Yeah. I am very thankful for these 2 drinks.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, it's time. It's time
Yeah.
for another round.
Now that I've had most of the Hawaiian, it's very sweet.
It's the
One
first
is
sip, you're like,
very
oh, it just
fun.
tastes like juice. But then
Yeah.
once you drink the whole thing, you're like, oh.
You're just like, that's a lot of juice.
Yeah.
Juice is for babies.
And middle-aged white people.
Yeah. Add some gin to it and then call
Then
me.
we'll talk. Yeah. All right. Time to re-up.
Did I blow out the mic again?
No big deal.
Damn it!
Happens to the best of us.
It just happens.
Usually you.
It happens to the Stephanies of us.
It has happened to me once. I love that you blew out the mic before the recording even officially started.
I don't have control over the volume of my voice. This is something that I've been very hyper conscious of even when I was a kid, because people just you laugh really loud. It's like, shit's funny.
Don't pick on someone's laughter. That's the most.
Yeah, my laughter was picked on. So I'm hypersensitive that I laugh like a literal jackass.
But I don't know, to make someone self-conscious about themselves when they're at their most
I know, it's
joyous and free.
I'm not even. Yeah, I know. Yeah, you're right. That's really fucked up. It's I laugh and I can't hear anything.
Yeah.
So it's just I just assume it's a regular sort of volume.
I would not say, your laugh is not quiet, but I wouldn't say your laugh is exceptionally loud.
It's my superpower.
It's a good power to have, I guess.
I just start wearing a cape.
Not all heroes wear capes.
That is true. Sometimes heroes just blow out microphones during their podcasts.
Yes.
So, what do you think of when you hear the word opium?
I don't know that that's any of your business, Stephanie.
You're like, are you a cop? You sound like a fucking cop.
I think of old-timey opium dens in I don't know, San Francisco or something, where there's a trade with China.
Yes, yes.
I think of China, essentially.
Of course you do.
Yeah.
Well, some very influential Americans,
Oh, imagine.
yes, got rich trafficking opium. Among them, a young man by the name of Warren Delano. Ever heard of him?
Oh!
Ever heard of him? Oh, are you okay?
How dare you?
I know.
How dare
that
you?
was my one fear that you already knew about this.
No, I don't.
Okay.
Not at all.
How
No.
dare you? I love that. Tux has just stormed out, you guys.
Beyond reproach over.
He's the topic of my scandal this episode.
What's his name again?
Warren Delano.
Warren Delano. Who he? Is he FDR's son or something, or?
Granddad.
Oh.
At the time, he considered his business dealings completely above board, nothing to see here. But he was very tight-lipped about the business that really made his family filthy fucking rich.
Sure.
He never talked about it. According to him, it was a, quote, fair, honorable, and legitimate trade.
So that's why they had so much fucking money.
Exactly.
Sarah Ann Delano was the one
Drug monies.
in control of the purse strings.
Yep. All the drug money.
And it was opium money.
Money. Okay, so you will learn that this fair, honorable, and legitimate trade is just rich speak for highly profitable but illegal.
But you're white, so who's going to stop you?
Facts. Damn it, I'm checkmate. So in China, he was a criminal and an outlaw. He was a fucking drug dealer. But in the United States, he was just a savvy businessman.
Sure, yeah.
You know?
I like how the theme of season 2 is just all racism all the time.
Yeah.
Somebody left us a review on iTunes that was Stephanie and Tux call out institutional racism and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, do we do that? Yeah, that's all we do anymore. Because it's everywhere. It's such a part of American,
It's
the foundation of our nation.
Once you see it once, you see it everywhere.
It's everywhere.
So this scandal is how the Delano Empire got its wealth, but it's really a scandal about freedom. The freedom to roll around secretly in drug money.
Yes.
You know, I am going to propose a toast.
To
life, to liberty, and to America's first opioid epidemic.
Yay! Woo!
Cheers!
Pew, 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 pew.
So, similar to the trade in kidnapped Africans The opioid trafficking, it was kind of the underbelly of a freewheeling global economy, devoid of morality. Pretty much everything was deemed fair in the pursuit of profits. No one had any qualms with anything if it made them money. So it's a little known fact that Americans' very first multimillionaires were drug dealers.
Wow.
They were the first in a long line of elites who built their enormous fortunes Tony Montana style.
Okay.
So FDR's granddad was just getting in while the getting was good.
He'd like to introduce us to his little friend.
I'm just thinking of Johnson, and like it would be a really big friend, the biggest friend you've ever seen.
You ever seen anything?
No one's seen a friend as big as this. So his family wealth was guaranteed for generations because he decided to sneak opium into China against imperial orders.
Into China?
Into China. The resulting riches made him one of the world's most powerful men, but it also created the world's first opioid epidemic because even back then things were global.
Okay.
Oops,
he did it again.
So a teeny bit of background on trade with China. Americans had a long-standing obsession with Chinese goods. They especially love tea because after all, we were once British subjects and shit.
Sure, yeah.
Even though the Ethiopians had perfectly drinkable coffee, we were obsessed with tea.
And like porcelain.
Yes.
And luxury goods.
Silks. All the things that Tux likes, basically.
The tuxes of their time.
Yes. So during British rule, England and the East India Company had a monopoly on trade with China, but the Revolutionary War changed all of that. The U.S., now freed of this monopoly, could trade with whoever the fuck they wanted, i.e. China, because they had all of the good shit.
What year is this?
Their first ship sailed there in 1784, I believe.
Oh, wow, okay.
But my story is around like the 1830s.
Okay.
This is just background.
Sure.
I'm just painting a pretty picture in watercolors. It takes some time, but just wait for it.
Yes.
There are layers. So you guys, I am an old woman. I have started to do watercolors.
Really?
And it takes forever.
Sure.
Because everything you paint has to dry.
You have to wait for the next...
A new layer. And then a new layer. And
I don't have the patience.
It's for old people. And I've just accepted the fact that I just have a lot of time on my hands now. So... yeah, I mentioned in episode 17 when I talked about Chinese exclusion that America's relationship with China was really crucial in really lifting our young economy. Without trade with them, we would be nothing, really. So once untethered from the British, American ships began sailing directly into Canton. The first U.S. ships arrived in 1784, and the trade that happened there made multimillionaires of the men who jumped right in. So who the hell is Warren Delano, and like why should we care? And it kind of sounds like he sucks. So he was born in 1809. He was a descendant in a long line of seafaring men who had just shipped a bunch of shit. Seamen. Oh no. It's blanked. It's bleeped out. Someone faints and then like little boys laugh. He followed in his ancestors' footsteps and he became an apprentice at a Boston merchant bank and shipping firm. At this firm, he built the rich connections that you would, like investment connections. Okay. Like he made a lot of friends who like move money around. This will be in play later. He left home at age 24 to follow his family's already established trading routes. Okay. He left Boston. He went to South America, then on to the Pacific Islands. And then he finally got to China.
Wow. Just a tour of imperialism.
Exactly. Exactly. In Canton, he replaced the head of a powerful trading company. He replaced a man by the name of Samuel Russell of the Boston Tea Company, Russell and Company. So he's replacing like the figurehead basically in this company. Delano would end up living in China for 9 years, earning the position of chief of operations of Canton, Macau, and Hong Kong.
Wow.
Do you know anything about Macau?
I've heard of it. That is the extent of my knowledge.
Okay. You're like, I know that it is a place.
Yes.
It's where people go to like gamble. It's like their Vegas.
Okay.
But it makes Vegas look like they're playing with Monopoly money.
Sure.
Like the amount of money that moves in Macau is like dwarfs Vegas. It's like 3 times.
Wow. I'm sure there's plenty of like illegal things happening too.
Yeah,
like,
and it's a port city, so all the good things are coming in through Macau.
Shake the dice and steal the rice.
What?
I think
what is this?
I do this every episode. That I have to have a RuPaul quote that I.
It sounds illicit. and I like it.
It might be from Paris is Burning. It's a reference to something.
Before Delano got there, Russell and Company mostly traded in tea and silk. But opium proved to be a real moneymaker.
Sure.
Because, I mean, drugs.
You can't cut porcelain, with baby powder.
Right. So, a quick bit about opium. Do you know where opium comes from originally?
Poppy seeds, right?
Yeah, but what region
no.
of the world? For me, at least, I think China and opium are totally linked in just popular culture. But originally, it comes from the Middle East. For hundreds of years, it was only used in small medicinal quantities. That is until the Dutch got a hold of it and did what the Dutch do best: smoking. Because, the Dutch.
Oh, sure.
The Dutch.
Pass the Dutchie.
Yes.
To one side or the other.
Be free, but also the left side is better. So they smoked it. They mixed it with tobacco. They claim that it lessened the effects of malaria, but it's we're all looking at you sideways.
I mean, if you have malaria, I'm sure you're in pain.
Yeah.
And it probably reduced the pain that you would have been in, but it's not going to actually help you.
No.
Other than getting you through the pain.
But the Dutch just like to smoke. I ain't mad at them. I'm just saying.
Shrug.
I like you just said shrug. So eventually the Chinese merchants, they began to imitate these Dutch people, and they would eventually take out the tobacco and just leave the opium in their pipes.
Yeah, okay.
And it simulated a feeling of euphoria.
Sure, yeah.
And, the rest is kind of history. While extremely profitable for Warren's company, the opium trade was really, really complicated. It was complicated for 4 really big reasons. The first was that it was fucking illegal.
Really?
Duh. Opium had long been banned by the emperor when the British started smuggling it in from India. However, many merchants found a way around the ban. Large ships containing gigantic hulls of opium met smaller boats outside of ports, and they'd quickly unload their drugs, sometimes while the boat was still in motion.
Wow, okay.
Yeah, so it was kind of a poorly kept secret done in broad daylight. You could always recognize these opium ships from far away by the smaller ships that just swarmed around it before they even got to the port.
Yeah.
Officials were bribed to look the other way instead of, enforcing these drug laws. The second big complication was the damage, obviously, that it caused to society, all the addiction. The third issue was the trade deficit that we had with China at the time. The trade deficit that we still kind of have with China. Their culture was old AF.
Yeah.
Their emperors believed that they already possessed everything worth having and had long possessed everything worth having. So they had little use for what they considered, quote unquote, barbarian.
Oh.
Yes.
I mean, good for them.
They didn't want our piddling third world garbage, On top of that, they were very wary of foreigners who they saw as only bringing trouble to their land.
Where's the lie?
It's like they have eyes and a working brain, you guys.
Yes.
It's crazy.
A crystal ball.
Yes. So Delano's problem was that China had much to sell but declined to buy shitty American-made products. So he made up for it by providing something that was in demand. Opium. Delano used profits from opium to purchase tea, pottery, silks, and a whole lot of things to sell back home.
So what would we have been trying to trade before we finally figured out opium was the one?
I mean, I guess we had our own fabrics and textiles. In Boston, I know that they were shipping some textile. Well, had tried to ship some textiles. Then they did not want.
Yeah, they're no, get this out of my face.
No. They would resell everything back home. This allowed Delano and other international drug cartels to get around the fourth complication, which was a shortage of silver.
Oh.
There was a global shortage of silver, and that was the only currency the Chinese would take. So they would sell their opium. Chinese people would give them silver, and they would use that silver to buy the silks, the teas.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So opium was their currency.
Okay.
Until they got the silver. So the British were the first in on the Chinese drug game. They smuggled in a very primo supply in from India. So Delano had to get his opium elsewhere, and he found that there was an opium supply in Turkey. The quality wasn't as good. at all, but he mixed it with the Indian supply.
Okay.
To, like, I guess bring it up to, like...
So he was, like, buying it from the British and mixing it with his...
Mixing it with his.
Okay.
Yeah. And selling that mixture. So it was extremely profitable for the Delano Company, but yeah, China kept pushing back because, again, this is illegal.
Yeah.
They're trafficking drugs in all of their ports there, selling something that by the emperor's decree, like, people could be killed for using opium.
Were there, like, ships that were caught?
I mean, Delano did have a connect on the ground.
Okay.
Who helped him move his supply.
Okay.
And I'm sure, just paid him.
To look the other way.
To look the other way, exactly. In 1836 is when the Chinese recommitted to ending the opium trade. Writing home, Delano said that he could not pretend to justify the opium trade on moral grounds, but as a merchant, I insist it's been a fair, honorable, and legitimate trade, and no more objectionable than the importations of wines and spirits to the U.S.
Same thing.
Yeah. As addiction became an epidemic in China, as the Chinese began paying with very limited supply precious silver, the emperor was like, what the fuck? Like, all this silver is leaving our empire in these illegal transactions. So he stepped up. In 1836, he named an imperial commission to focus solely on ending the opium trade. He's like, okay, I'm really serious, you guys. This is going to stop. I'm putting this guy in charge. He's going to stop everything. It didn't stop anything. Despite this massive crackdown, the trade grew even more because at this time, there's already 12 million opium users in China.
I was going to say, once people are addicted, they're going to find a way.
Exactly. Delano's company and other foreign opium traders took full advantage of this. And this led to the Opium Wars. Do you know anything about the Opium Wars?
I've heard of the Opium Wars, but I don't really...
I'm not going to get into it. It is a British versus Chinese thing.
Okay.
All you need to know for the purpose of this scandal is that in the end, the Chinese lost.
Okay.
And they allowed free and open trade in Hong Kong.
Of opium?
Of everything. It was,
wow.
Well, that's why Hong Kong was basically given to the British.
Yeah.
And it was only kind of recently returned. They're still autonomous for now. They get 50 years, so I think they have like 30 plus years left. But yeah, they were basically allowed to just do whatever the fuck they wanted in Hong Kong.
Wow.
But it was illegal everywhere else.
But then once it's in Hong Kong, it can be smuggled.
Correct.
Yeah, okay.
Correct. By selling opium, Delano helped to start an international craving that would reach epidemic proportions in his own lifetime. When he started trafficking in the 1830s, there were 3 million Chinese people smoking opium. By 1890, it was almost 40 million.
Holy shit.
A full 10% of their population.
Wow.
Yes. To stop opium use, Imperial China banned producing, consuming. They even executed dealers and forced drug users to wear heavy wooden collars, and they subjected them to public beatings.
That's going to stop you from being addicted to drugs.
I know. But smugglers and traffickers like Warren, they fed this demand without taking on any real risk.
Sure.
I mean, they had to bribe people, but there was no, they weren't going to be executed. The American drug cartels, they argued that they only carried the drug. What the Chinese did with it after they gave it to them wasn't their problem.
What are they going to do with it? Okay.
Shrug.
Yeah.
They also pointed to the corruption of these Chinese officials who were kind of looking the other way. They were pointing at the British and the Turks who actually manufactured the opium. They were pointing at everyone but themselves for what they were doing, the cargo that they were carrying and distributing in China. Warren, he wrote home saying, quote, "The high officers of the government have not only connived at the trade, but the governor and other officers of the province have bought the drug and have taken it from the station ships in their own government boats."
You're still involved. You're the one transporting it from point A to point B.
Yeah.
With the express purpose of getting people addicted and creating a market.
But money.
Well, sure, yeah.
So it was obviously very self-serving to think this way, but, the cash, helped assuage their guilt a little bit. A number of American drug traffickers, including Warren Delano, had moral objections to slavery, but they were totally morally flexible when it came to dumping drugs on the Chinese.
It's unfortunate that people can't see my face right now.
Describe your face.
I don't even know the word. I'm just confused and annoyed at the same time. Is there a word for that?
It's a lot.
Incredulous.
Ooh.
I am incredulous.
Look at you and your $6 word. Yeah, so they were very flexible when it came to dumping all this illegal merchandise on the Chinese. However, it does seem like the Americans treated the Chinese better, at least better than the British. I think it's just due to their longer history. In the early 1800s, the British controlled 90% of the opium trade, illegal opium trade. I mean, all of the opium trade was illegal. So the Americans only had 10% in a very saturated market. So I really think...
So we had to be, like, nice to try and...
They had to mind their P's and all of their fucking Q's to get anything.
Yeah.
So they were very courteous. Warren's brother, Ned, he even moved to China at one point to help in what was now the family business.
Yeah.
He wrote that, quote, "The English are awfully envious of the success of their rivals and throw at them every abuse you could think of. Quietly, the Americans pursue a straightforward course without condescending to notice them." They just jealous. We're getting money. It's like, shut up, Ned. But Delano, he only ever really fucked with Chinese traders. It's not like he knew an average Chinese person. Other than a faceless storekeeper or like a laborer or like someone in the mob, basically. Because the Chinese were very, very insular for a while, and they just were suspicious of foreigners, rightfully so.
As they should have been.
Only one of his early partners at his firm ever even bothered to learn Chinese, even though they were there for like decades.
Wow.
He himself didn't speak Chinese, even though he was there for 9 years. Okay. So his plan was to secure the bag and get the fuck out.
Sure,
you know? He doesn't care. He's making that money. So by early 1843, Delano had spent a very, very profitable decade in China. He built an empire. He became the head of what was now the biggest American firm dealing with China.
Wow.
He came home. He's 33 at this time.
Wow.
Yeah. He came home at 33, part of the 1%, like rich beyond his wildest dreams. He settled in Newburgh, New York.
Really?
Yes.
Okay, I see you, Newburgh.
A very eligible bachelor. If you're wondering how rich he was so rich that he was married within 4 months.
Yeah.
Because the minute his toe touched the soil there, every eligible woman is just like, ooh.
Wow. Okay.
So he ended up marrying the daughter of a Massachusetts Supreme Court judge within 4 months.
Wow.
So these newly wedded strangers, once they got married, they moved to China.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. They immediately sailed to China and they remained there for 3 years. He bought a big abandoned bungalow in Macau, overlooking the harbor. The Delanos lived in a walled-off estate. Shocking.
Of course,
right?
Yeah.
They had a few kids. I think they had 2 kids, and I think she was pregnant when they finally moved back. But he prevented all of them from learning Chinese. It was an attempt...
Prevented them?
Yeah. It was an attempt to shelter them from the constant insult of, I think it's Fan Kuei.
Okay.
Foreign devil. Every time they left their estate, people would just shout that at them and their kids.
So if they didn't know what it meant, they didn't have to worry about...
Exactly.
Huh.
Warren was rolling in money, but he did not plan on staying there permanently. Yeah, as I said. He wanted to retire and just invest his drug monies. He wanted to buy his wife a fancy row house in New York City.
Yeah.
And they wanted to have a house in Newburgh. Just to be there, on the weekends and whatnot. So his wife was not adjusting well to Macau. So he moved the family. They returned home in the summer of 1846. And he was accompanied by a wet nurse because she was pregnant. And they brought a servant back with them. Catherine Delano did recover her health and eventually bore 9 more kids.
Wow, yeah.
One of them, Sarah, of course, would become FDR's mom. Despite his intentions, Warren was called out of retirement. He was called to go back to Hong Kong for a little bit. Within a few months of his return back to New York, his brother Ned wrote that Warren was, quote, head and heels in business, mixing in all kinds, railroads, coal mine, shipbuilding. I fear he's branching out too much.
Stick with what you know.
Yeah.
Drugs.
So the thing about Ned is that Ned be knowing.
Yeah.
So in a flash, Warren Delano's wealth evaporated in the panic of 1857, forcing him to put his Newburgh estate up for sale.
Yeah.
But at the time, because so many people lost all of their money, like, no one could buy it at that time.
Sure, yeah.
Because it was such a big estate.
Yeah.
So Warren chose to return again to China to recoup his fortune. He spent 5 years, once again, slanging opium. Many of his rich friends, like, ridiculed him because they didn't think that there was anywhere, because it was it was a global phenomenon. A lot of people lost so much money, like, even in the UK and in Europe. It seems like maybe these friends don't really know his real business.
Yeah.
Because they were just bringing back tea and shit.
Sure.
You know?
Yeah.
So they're just like, oh no one's buying anything. And it's like, okay, sure.
Everyone is buying drugs. It doesn't matter how fucking poor you are. If you're addicted to opium, you're buying it, no matter how much money you have.
Exactly. So his friends laughed at him, but his drug trafficking experience taught him otherwise, because there's always a market for drugs, as you said. Like,
100%.
Always.
Yeah.
So he was confident that he could rebuild his fortune, and he was fucking right. Opium was raging in China, but it was really just getting started globally at this time.
Okay.
Smoking and injecting opium derivatives like morphine was just coming online, and it created a lot of hardcore drug users in the US. The main toll of the opium use in the States was felt amongst the casual users, the ones who started using opium under doctor's orders.
Sure, yeah.
It was socially and medically acceptable. So it shouldn't be shocking that a rise in opioid prescriptions led to a widespread addiction, and in effect became America's first opioid epidemic.
And then we forgot about history, and you're like, oh, you have a backache? Fentanyl.
Yeah, oh my God. Oh. In 1859, Harper's Magazine wrote of, quote, glassy eyes in Fifth Avenue drawing rooms and opera stalls, and permanently stupefied babies, all people who took or were given opium in prescription or over-the-counter form.
Yeah.
Over-the-counter.
Yeah.
You could just buy it. Like, let me just have all of these opiums.
Sure.
Like, let me just put it in my cart and leave.
No one's stopping you.
Yeah. It would take until the late 19th century for American doctors to chill on their prescription of opioids to their patients because they saw how deadly and addictive it was before ramping it up again in the 2000s. You know, because
monies.
Oh, us.
Fentanyl.
This is why history is important. But money.
Literally,
But money.
yeah.
So in 1860, Warren returned to China, except this time he went to Hong Kong because that's, again, where everything was legal.
Sure.
He rebuilt his fortune. By the time Delano returned, opium abuse had long devastated China and caused 2 wars, because there were 2 opium wars with Britain. He helped to create a system that fueled addiction worldwide, and he made millions while doing it. He was able to recoup his losses and then some.
Yeah, of course.
However, it was really the Civil War that truly secured his wealth.
Really?
Yeah. During the war, Delano shipped opium to the Medical Bureau of the U.S. War Department. All we had was morphine.
Yeah.
And Warren was the connect.
Wow.
Yeah. So I assume he must have been really relieved to find this like new trading partner at home, then
not have to go to Hong Kong. Yeah.
This place that he hated. He never fucking learned Chinese because like the Chinese fucking hated him.
Yeah.
He was an outlaw. He was a criminal. He was dumping drugs on their population. So he could dump drugs here.
War is good for the economy.
Yeah. So his days of like smuggling drugs into China were over. He devoted his old age to investment as he planned. He also ran his big estate. He gave heavily to Republican causes, most notably Booker T. Washington's work with like Southern blacks.
Wow, okay.
He supported them. His old opium days very conveniently faded from memory.
Yeah.
In 1880, he eventually gave his daughter Sarah in marriage to a well-born, air quotes, well-born neighbor, James Roosevelt. So this old drug trafficker was like real tight-lipped about his opium days, as were his partners in Russell and Company, the firm that he worked for. it's not really clear how much FDR knew about the source of his family's wealth.
I mean, it's also so far removed from him. You were talking about some like shady dealings that your grandpa did that no one ever talked about. You know what I mean? Like, you might have some sort of inclination, but you're not going to know details, and you probably don't want to know, so you're not going to look into it. Sure, but she's not fucking spilling the tea.
Exactly, yeah. So FDR's recent biographers kind of reject efforts by the Delano family to like pretend that they didn't know anything because it was so rampant. And he had done it for so many, like, over a decade. We have the receipts. I get the family's discomfort. Like, it's completely understandable. And historians, too, were totally willing to let this pursuit of opium profits be largely forgotten.
Sure.
Even though there's so much documentation about it. But I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that Americans only had 10% of the share. And I think they kind of morally rationalized that, like, oh, it's really the British. They're doing the worst things.
The British were.
They were, yeah. But they had a longer history. They got there first, and they had a better supply.
Yeah.
That's all it is.
Yeah.
So drug runners like Delano, and he was not the only one, like Jacob Astor.
All of them, I'm sure, had some part of it.
They became multimillionaires, but most of them, almost all of them, became philanthropists.
Yeah.
Towards the end of their life. So it's like they didn't do all bad, but it's like we do kind of have to weigh his money and his like crazy fortune and all of his charity work against the damage that he did. I mean, he wasn't the only one running drugs into China against, imperial
No, not at all.
orders, but he made so much money. Like, he was one of the wealthiest that got his money from drug running. So, did you know that America's first drug laws targeted opium? And that they were really racist? Are you shocked by this? Are you shocked?
The war on drugs.
I know this is an audio medium, but Tux just fainted.
I need opium to revive me.
So these drug laws, they went into effect at the height of Chinese exclusion. That's how I found out about this scandal. I'm just like, wait, Delano's did what?
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So Warren, he did live to see the opium crackdown at home. I guess I kind of wonder how he felt about these, because they started to tax opium heavily, like any sort of opium that was coming in from China. They taxed it really heavily.
Eventually, I'm guessing China started growing their own poppies and producing their own opium.
I don't think they ever did. I think it all came in from India, from the Brits. Yeah, they never produced their own. We think that they do because it's just because racism.
You always think about the Chinese. Yeah.
A lot of the really anti-Chinese journalism, like the Yellow Peril thing that was happening, they pointed to the Chinese being like, oh, they're drug users, they're trying to get white women high to rape them. And it's like, Americans and British are supplying the Chinese with this drug.
Wow.
Like, look at yourselves for this issue that you think is a problem.
Yeah, okay.
I just wonder if he cared, because there was this massive backlash against opium. I mean, kind of focused at the Chinese, but also you couldn't really get it over the counter. He lived to see the first really major tax on opium, but he did not see the full ban on opium in 1905.
I'm sure by that point he was kind of out of the game, and as long as I'm not implicated in this being a problem, who gives a half a shit?
But I just wonder if he like felt bad, because he's just like, oh shit, opium is like
he's
bad
rich.
And
he was white.
Yeah, okay.
I'm guessing. I'm guessing no.
Like, I don't know. What if? Could you imagine if, like, once it's illegal, like in 1905, if like the Chinese just started running drugs into New York Harbor or like the Bay Area?
Yeah.
Like, fuck your laws. Like, I'm trying to get a summer house.
All hell would have broken loose.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The end.
Wow. Good to know. Also, how dare you?
You're just like, noted. Period.
I've never said FDR was perfect.
No one is.
Yeah.
I thought it was interesting that
it's fascinating.
His fortune came from drug monies.
Yeah.
International drug smuggling is how his family got money. And he's considered, in the top 10% of wealthiest presidents today.
Crazy.
Yeah.
I see you, Stephanie.
You're like, I see you in your scandal.
Trying to ruin FDR for me over here. No, thank you for that. I mean, whatever, I hate you. We're not friends anymore, but that's fine.
Whatever, rum is my friend.
Yes, exactly. No, thank you for telling that story, because, like, I did always kind of wonder where their money came from. I knew that his mom was the one that was like in charge of the purse strings and held it over him and held it over Eleanor. But I never really understood where her money had come from. I could talk about this for hours and hours, but we're not going to, because my cocktail is sadly empty. There's here sad ice and melted ice, which is water for those scientists of you out there. Water has 3 states. Only 2 of those states are present in my cocktail. The 3rd state burns your hand pretty badly.
Okay, wow.
If you're making mashed potatoes.
Oh. This has gone off the rails and I love it.
Thank you for listening to Beyond Reproach. History is juicy.
Yes.
We just add various different kinds of rum. Many different kinds of rum.
All the rum.
And fruit juice. And imperialist sadness.
A lot of that, yes. Yes.
Thank you. This has been Tux motherfucking Lurzel.
Ooh, wow. It's just Stephanie Domingo. I feel lesser.
Stephanie goddamn fucking Domingo.
Tux, are you okay?
Rum has hurt me.
But you were swearing before the rum.
Before there was rum.
Yeah.
Yes.
You were...
BR.
Yes.
Which is also the initials of this podcast.
Okay. Good night. Beyond Reproach is proudly recorded in Bushwick, Brooklyn. New episodes are released the 1st and 3rd Monday of every month. Please note that we are not historians. We are just a couple of drunks who never shut up and love history. Full list of all source information can be found in the show notes on our website. Please take a moment to rate, review, and subscribe. Written reviews are especially important. If you like us, please do one of 2 things. Leave us a review on Apple Podcasts or send this episode to a friend, family member, or someone you think would be into it. Don't forget to follow us on social media. Make sure you follow us on Instagram because we post our cocktail recipes the Thursday before each full episode. Please drink along with us if you are not driving. We also have a shop at beyondreproachpod.com. Get your merch, brand yourselves. We are on Patreon if anyone would love to show us some love and throw us some nickels to support the production of our show.